And let's dive deeper and deeper and deeper and get to the root cause of, okay, what is the actual intention behind this goal for me, or what is the actual purpose of me having this audacious goal in my life, right? And getting to the root cause of that might actually make you realize, well, actually, that's not even a goal that I want to have in the first place. So let's mix it up a little bit. What do I actually want?
Welcome to the Manders Mindset Podcast. Here you'll find both monologue and interviews of entrepreneurs, coaches, healers, and a variety of other people, where your host Amanda Russo will discuss her own mindset and perspective and her guest mindset and perspective on the world around us. Manders and her guests will help explain to you how shifting your mindset will shift your life.
Welcome to Manders Mindset. As always, I'm your host, Amanda Russo, aka the Breathing Goddess, and I'm here with Laine Allen. And Laine is an EFT practitioner specializing in body acceptance. And I am new to learning even what EFT is. So Laine is going to educate all of us today on all things EFT. And I'm here with Laine today.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I'm so excited to have this conversation with you. As you mentioned, I am an EFT practitioner and a body acceptance coach. So this is right up my alley, being able to talk about this stuff, and it really lights me up. So I'm so pumped.
Thank you so much for being here. So can you tell us what EFT is?
Absolutely. EFT stands for Emotional Freedom Technique, and it's also referred to as tapping. So if you hear me use EFT, Emotional Freedom Technique, or tapping, they're all interchangeable. It just means the same thing. And essentially, it's an alternative treatment for physical pain and emotional distress. And the way that I like to explain EFT, and I think the easiest way to explain EFT is to kind of give an analogy. So if you've ever been on a road trip and you come across like a really breathtaking view, you pull over, you stop, you get out of the car, and you just you soak it all in, and you're just in awe. And that's a little bit of what EFT can give to us when we practice tapping. So if you could imagine that your body is the landscape of the road trip, you've got highways running through it. These are what we refer to as our meridians or our energy systems. Scientifically speaking, that's what we refer to as the premovascular system. So when we're feeling stressed or anxious, it's kind of like there's a bit of a traffic jam on those highways. And what EFT does essentially is it helps us clear that traffic. So by gently tapping on specific points of our body, what we're doing is we're actually sending signals straight to the traffic control center of our brain, which is known as the amygdala. And you're telling the amygdala, hey, we're safe, we're okay, we can let this traffic flow again. And that action really does soothe that intense fight, flight, freeze, or fawn response that we often have when we do get stressed. So now let's talk about a little bit why we speak while doing EFT tapping. So if you can imagine you're on a road trip with your friend, you're not going to be sitting there silently, awkwardly the whole time, right? Like you guys will be sharing stories, you'll be talking, you might be, having a little sing-along to the Spice Girls, I don't know. But that's what speaking during EFT is like. It really allows us to express and release our feelings, and it really helps us change how we react to certain problems. So overall, EFT aims to restore the balance in our body's energy system so that the next time that we are dwelling on past events, we're a little bit anxious about the future, the intensity of those feelings is really decreased. And that essentially is what EFT does, or how it works in response to your body.
Okay. And you mentioned speaking with EFT and tapping. How does that work? So are you speaking to yourself?
Yeah, essentially. I mean, you can do nonverbal EFT. It's something that's often or can be referred to as the movie technique. So a lot of the time when we're dealing with very intense traumas from the past, sometimes we can't even verbalize what our experience was. Like, it's very challenging. It can be very challenging to even put into words the things that we experience, right? And that's why we do keep them so internal. So we can do what's referred to as the movie technique, which is essentially you're doing the tapping, but maybe your eyes are closed down and you're actually thinking about that particular trauma or that particular experience, and you're just playing it like a movie in your head whilst you're doing the tapping. And once you get to a point where you feel like it's quite intense, that's when we stop. We do a couple of rounds of tapping. Now, yes, it's great that we have that ability, but being able to speak and tap at the same time is going to, in my opinion, give you a better outcome and a better response. But it may take you a couple of times to be able to verbalize what you're actually experiencing. So the talking component and the tapping component work really nicely with each other because we're soothing our body by tapping on these meridian points, and we're actually verbalizing. Because a lot of the time when we've experienced traumas or we're, not too sure about what's going to happen in our future or a little bit uncertain about certain things in our life, we tend to keep it all inside and we don't necessarily share it with other people, and we just are mentally ruminating on it, right? But, it's like when you have a conversation with a girlfriend about what a terrible day you've had at work and your boss said this and, your kids are just driving you up the wall and your husband doesn't appreciate you or whatever the case might be. How good do you feel after you have vented, after you've gotten that out through just being able to talk to someone else about it? Now, I'm not saying that we need to go and emotionally dump on all of our girlfriends because, sometimes our girlfriends don't have the emotional capacity to deal with that. But we all know what that feels like, right? When you're actually able to tell someone exactly how you're feeling and you're not keeping it bottled up inside. And that's the beauty of EFT, right? Is the tapping and the talking gives you that emotional release that you've been looking for, hopefully.
Okay. Now, how did you first discover EFT?
Oh, that's a really great question. So during the pandemic, a lot of us, I know for a fact that a lot of us really experienced a complete mental shift. For me, that was more in towards the negative side. I wasn't really feeling myself. I was working in a corporate job. I had been there for quite some time. I was already kind of one foot out the door, but just not quite knowing what I wanted to do. And then the pandemic hit, and for security reasons, I stayed at my job because I was an essential worker. I had the ability to still go to work, but unfortunately at that time, my partner was also working at his job. He was considered essential as well, but we were on different shifts. And I also wasn't working with my regular team. I was managing a team of staff, but I was the only supervisor that was on shift essentially. And I felt so utterly alone. Like I was getting up by myself, going to work, essentially being in the office by myself, coming home to my partner who had already been at work all day and was asleep in bed. And I just felt so utterly alone, and I just couldn't see any light at the end of the tunnel. And what I was really missing at that point was a sense of community. And where I was in Melbourne, Australia, we had some of the harshest lockdowns for the longest period of time. And so I was just like, I can't find a community. I can't actually physically be with any community. So my next best option was to find online communities. And one of the communities I found was called Self-Love School by Anna Rose. And one of the things that she really touched on was, getting your mindset right, which we all know that's a huge part of our mental health journey. And her encouragement was to read a lot more. So I walked into an op shop because that was the only kind of shopping center thing that was open during the pandemic for us. And I found this book for $2, and it was called Radical Self-Love by Gala Darling. And I was really drawn to this cover because she was like this pink-haired, tattooed, young looking woman that was just, I was just drawn to her essentially at the end of the day. Like she's right up my alley in terms of like, I guess, influencers or people that you want to kind of like aspire to be like. And so I was like, oh, I wonder if like she's still around or, what's her story? And so I jumped onto Instagram, I looked her up, and I found that she also had an online community, which was called The Vortex. And they had a group community call, and I remember this very clearly. It was right in the middle of the day for me, and I jumped on this very first community call, and they did 2 hours of EFT tapping. And I had never done EFT before. I'd never even heard of it. So I'm sitting there for like 2 hours, just like tapping on points of my face and like reciting all of these affirmations. And we get off the call, and I was so exhausted. I had to go and have a nap. And I woke up after my little nap, and I was like, what on earth was that? Like, that was just a whole other experience. And I woke up from my little slumber, and I was like, I have to learn more about this. And so I found a school in Australia called the Australian Tapping Institute, who were doing online classes at that point because obviously pandemic, nothing's open. So I did a 12-month certification program to become an advanced practitioner and life coach with them. And that gave me the opportunity to really step away from my corporate job after being there for so long to step into something that was more aligned with my values and what I wanted to give back to the community and be in service with. So that is how my long-winded answer of how I came across tapping.
Okay. What did you do in corporate before?
I managed a team of staff members that picked and packed blood to go out to hospitals. So your version would be like the American Blood Service, or, you know, the Canadian Blood Service, or the UK Blood Service. We were the Australian Red Cross Blood Service. And yeah, I worked there, started off just admin reception gal, and stayed there for just over 8 years and worked my way up to become the youngest, only female supervisor in Australia. Yeah.
Wow. That's awesome. But it wasn't for you.
Look, it was an amazing experience. I worked with an incredible team of other team leaders and supervisors. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think that when you as an individual grow and learn and evolve, and your values may ultimately change, if your values aren't aligning to what you're doing in your everyday life, then something needs to change, right? Something needs to shift. And for me, my values just weren't aligning anymore, being in that place. So being able to do something that was more service-centered from my perspective of what service looks like, from something that was a little bit also, I got to be a little bit more creative. I got to have my time freedom back as well, because obviously being a supervisor for a government organisation can be very, very stressful at times. So being able to have my time freedom back and be able to wake up in the morning and go, you know what, today I'm going to go and do yoga, or today I am going to go for a walk because I have that time and that ability is not something that I take for granted. I'm very, very fortunate that EFT has allowed me that time freedom.
That's powerful, though, that you were able to make that transition, because that's not always easy.
No.
Even the normalcy of it, you know, getting used to 8 years is a long time.
Yeah, absolutely.
How was that transition?
It was very slow for me, I think, because I already had one foot out of the door when the pandemic kind of hit. Then obviously, you know, the pandemic coming along, being like, well, I don't really want to leave my job right now because I just don't feel secure in being able to just go to nothing. So eventually I worked myself into a new position at the organisation where I was more in charge of developing training programs and things like that, which was just very individual work. I didn't have to manage a team anymore, which was nice, a nice little break from that. And then dropping down to more part-time hours for me until it got to a point where I thought, you know what, I love what I'm doing in terms of the EFT space, and I just want to be able to do this full time. So it was a bit of a progression over a few years, and then towards the end, like a very quick, maybe 6 to 8 months of transitioning out of that training and development role directly into EFT.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Now, I want to backtrack a little bit. You mentioned after your first time doing the 2 hours of EFT that you were exhausted. Why did EFT make you exhausted?
I think that, like any kind of conversation where you're doing majority of the talking, what you're doing is you're actually doubling your breathing pattern, right? You're not just breathing in and out. When you're speaking, you're actually doubling your inhales and your exhales. And that's exhausting. It's kind of like, taking a brisk walk. And if you're doing that for like 2 hours, I mean, you speak to any person who's like a motivational speaker or a singer, that can be very exhausting afterwards. And again, it comes back to that whole thing that we were talking about at the start, where a lot of the time these traumas and experiences that we're living over and over in our head, we don't actually verbalize and we don't actually speak out into existence, right? So, and it does take a lot of emotional work, a lot of physical work as well at times to get to a point where you are feeling an actual sense of exhaustion from it, because again, you are speaking, you are tapping, and a lot of the time our trapped emotions, our trapped energies, they need a physical release, right? It's not just, oh, I did some tapping and now I'm all good in the hood and it's great. A lot of the time when you're tapping, you'll actually find that your body does have some form of a response. Now, for me personally, when I'm tapping, I yawn a lot. I yawn so constantly. I'm like, you're not boring me. It's not like that. It's just that that's how I project out emotionally with this energy. Some people tend to sneeze. Crying is another very common way of being able to allow your body to have an emotional response, or a physical response to an emotion, I should say. A lot of the time we can perspirate a lot more, so sweat. We can also have the other ones where you might be burping a little bit or it's coming out the other end as well. But again, that is a physical response to the emotional release of what's happening inside of you.
Okay. Is there always going to be some type of physical release?
Not always. I mean, I personally haven't really seen anyone not have a physical response. However, majority of the time, the yawning is a very common one. Obviously crying, because a lot of these emotions we've stored up for so long and they're just sitting in our body, just waiting to be released. And you could have years of that emotional baggage just waiting inside of your energy systems. And, it's really quite interesting because in EFT, we do what's called the setup statement to begin with. And that's where you tap on the side of your hand, which is referred to as the karate chop point. And the setup statement involves 3 rounds of saying a particular affirmation. And at the end of that affirmation, you say something along the lines of, even though I feel this way, I still love and accept myself anyway, or I still honor and respect who I am anyway. And a lot of the time, some people can't even get past that without having an emotional response. The amount of clients that I've had that cry within those first 3 statements because they've never actually even told themselves that they accept who they are is quite big and heavy for them. And already they're having an emotional response, right? And that's really powerful.
Wow. No, that makes a lot of sense. Now, is this something that, say people were to try tapping or EFT the first time, is there instant results? Does it take multiple sessions?
So I think that EFT is a really incredible and versatile tool that we can use at any time, any place. It doesn't cost you anything, so it's very accessible. However, when you are tapping by yourself, there are a couple of considerations that people do really need to keep in mind. And firstly, that is that our brain really wants to protect us from any kind of emotional discomfort, which could prevent us from going deep and addressing, the root cause of what the issue might be at hand. And so we might unknowingly ignore, or we might unknowingly downplay the subconscious messages that are really trying to surface. And then secondly, without the proper guidance, we might do the complete opposite and get too deep, too quick in an emotionally charged issue, right? And this can really lead to quick emotional distress, especially if we don't have the necessary support in order to kind of navigate these feelings. And this is where having a certified EFT practitioner like myself really is invaluable, because we provide a safe and confidential space for that emotional release and for that healing. We're obviously trained to ask the right questions that really do encourage people to explore their emotions deeply, but also safely in a place that's really comfortable for that individual. And so, whilst you certainly can practice EFT at home alongside any kind of other practices that you may want to do, having the support of somebody who has gone through this and become a practitioner or a qualified person makes the process a little bit more effective and ensures that you're doing it in a safe and supportive environment.
Okay. Would you say you get different experiences from EFT your first time versus, say, your 100th time?
I think every single session provides a different experience, because at the end of the day, you're tapping into a subconscious part of your mind that maybe you haven't accessed in a really long time, or your brain just hasn't been willing to go there. So I think every session is going to be quite different, and it also depends on what you want to work on, right? So if you can imagine a table with some legs on it, right? I might imagine a table with 4 legs. You might imagine a table that's only got 3 legs. The root cause of holding up that limiting belief is the tabletop, right? So your limiting belief may be, I'm not worthy enough, okay? And all of those legs that hold up the table, there could be 4, there could be 100. All of those legs that hold up that limiting belief are all of those experiences that you've had in the past, or your anxieties about the future. So if your thing is, I don't think that I'm worthy enough, one of those legs of that holding up that tabletop might be, I don't think I'm worthy enough because when I was a kid, my mum told me over and over again that I was useless. Okay. And another leg might be, well, when I was in high school, a teacher told me that I would never, ever, ever amount to anything, that I was just going to be stuck in this system, right? So our objective in EFT is to knock down those legs that are holding up the tabletop of that limiting belief. And for some people, it might all come crashing down after one session. And whilst that's amazing and fantastic, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be the same for another person who's got a similar limiting belief. They might have hundreds of things that they need to work through to get to that tabletop, so to speak. So I hope that kind of gives a good analogy as to your question.
No, yeah, that makes sense. So I know you specialize in doing it towards body acceptance. Now, how do you use EFT to help with body acceptance?
Absolutely. So as I kind of touched on earlier with my road trip analogy, so we're trying to restore the body's energy system, right? We're trying to restore the balance in it, so that the next time that we're thinking about these past events or these future worries, that intensity has decreased, hopefully to a point where you're having a more neutral thought or a less reactive response. So if you can imagine that you're someone who can't help but walk past a mirror and go, oh, every time that you see your reflection, after one EFT session, or maybe after a few, because it's, very dependent on the individual, you may still walk past that mirror and go, ugh, but there might also be a part of you that actually takes a moment to pause and stop and look at your reflection and say, hey, even though I'm not feeling like the hottest bitch right now, I still know that I am completely worthy. Or perhaps, you're someone who gets really caught up in comparing yourself on social media, right? Like, we live in this technological age where, everyone's posting the highlight reels of their entire life. And you might be scrolling, and when you see someone that you compare yourself to, you might start feeling crappy about yourself, but you keep scrolling. Whereas if you try EFT, maybe after a session, maybe after a couple of sessions, when you are scrolling next time, maybe you actually take the time to pause, go onto that person's page and decide to actually unfollow them because you know that you don't feel that good about yourself when you're scrolling and comparing. So it's kind of like giving you that power to kind of stop and change the direction of where you want things to go. And that, I think, is the power of EFT. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're never going to have a bad body image day ever again, but it does mean that you'll understand that it's totally okay to have days like that and move on from it in a more positive way.
That makes a lot of sense. What are some other things EFT's known to potentially help with?
Oh gosh, EFT honestly can help with absolutely anything. And that's the thing, right? Like, as someone who's working in EFT and wants to, build a community, I want to build a community with women who want to understand that their body acceptance journey is not something that A, they have to do alone, or B, that they get to come to terms with the fact that there are so many other systems in place that hold up our identity as women that keep us really small. And so whilst that's for me and that's my jam and that's my cup of tea and what I love doing, EFT can help with so many other things. It can help with addictions. It can help with phobias. It can help with past traumas. A lot of people who do EFT are also very into being able to manifest, if that's something that people are interested in learning more about. EFT is a great tool for manifestation. EFT is a great tool in helping with decision making as well. If you're stuck between two options and you really don't know which avenue to take, being able to tap through those different scenarios will allow your body to give you a visceral response and give you an answer that you may have been looking for. May not necessarily be the answer that you want, but at least you're actually going through the motions of your undecided and giving that a go. So yeah, EFT, as I said, very versatile, can be used for pretty much anything. And it's great in terms of just everyday stresses and worries because you can kind of do it subtly as well. Like, you could be on the train on the way to work and tapping on your collarbone point if that's the point that works for you. You could go into a cubicle at your office and start doing some rounds of tapping if you feel like there's been a situation where your boss has really riled you up or, and a co-worker said something that you felt really uncomfortable with, taking that time out of your day to just recalibrate your energy so that those meridian systems aren't getting blocked is really potent.
And now, how would you suggest people go about tapping throughout their day? Because you mentioned earlier the benefits of doing it with a facilitator. So if they've never done tapping before, how should they go about?
So I have a free resource that's available on my website, which is called the Personal Peace Procedure. It's not something that I created. It was created by the EFT kind of guru, Gary Craig. But a lot of other EFT practitioners have adopted the Personal Peace Procedure, done their own kind of like little spins on it. And essentially what it is being able to like write down 50 experiences in your life that you still kind of remunerate on. Like, you might be thinking, wow, 50 is a lot, but you'd actually be surprised that once you start getting into the habit of, writing them down, you might start from your earliest memory up until where you are now, or you might start from the most intense experience you've ever had to the least. And being able to write those down and just kind of catalog them and look at them through the lens of like, right, these are all the things that have happened to me in my life that I still feel like I'm holding on to. So let me look at which are the ones that are the least intense that I can probably do by myself, that I don't really need somebody else's assistance with, right? One of the things might just be, again, the example of a coworker saying something that really just ticked you off, right? Doesn't really affect you in the grand scheme of things, but it really annoyed you on that particular day. And it's still not something that you can forget about because it only just happened 3 or 4 days ago and you're still annoyed about it, right? So you could start on that because it's, the least intense thing out of your whole catalog that you've got going on. And you can work your way through these until you get to a point where you're like, right, this is something that's a little bit too intense for me, or something that I don't think that I could do by myself. I'd like to have some support with it. So it's about kind of finding that balance. If you do find yourself tapping and you're starting to get really emotional, where you start maybe crying or you just physically can't go on anymore, that is your flag to essentially stop what you're doing. Let's not go back there. Let's go book in a session with someone. Or maybe, if therapy is your thing and EFT's not, or if breathwork's your thing and EFT's not, reaching out to someone who can support you through going through that emotion so that you don't have to do it by yourself.
That makes a lot of sense. And now, in terms of doing it with a facilitator, is this something that can be done virtually? Is it done in person?
Absolutely. So there are different practitioners that obviously have different ways in terms of how they like to deliver their services. I'm someone who loves doing virtual because I just believe in the power of energy through the internet. And I think that anyone can harness that energy, and it makes things so accessible for us, which I think is really important. So I personally love doing online sessions. I know other people prefer to do them in person. There are groups that you can join as well, where they might be doing tapping on a particular topic that you can join in for, maybe for free, maybe for a couple of dollars, whatever the case might be, just to give it a try. There are also heaps of resources that are available on YouTube. So if you type in like 5-minute EFT on YouTube, you'll be able to find someone referred to as the tap daddy in Gala Darling's world, who is Brad Yates. There's so many resources. I've got books here as well that also break down EFT, and if you're stuck on what to say, they've got tapping scripts available as well. So there's just a plethora of information that is available for emotional freedom techniques that someone can start with today.
Okay. In terms of tapping, if it's in person, is the individual tapping themselves still, or is the practitioner tapping them for them?
I prefer that the individual does the tapping on themselves. Obviously, you can do tapping on the individual with their permission, of course. But essentially, I think at the end of the day, like, you want to have that ownership over your body and, regain that trust with your body's energy system as well. And it gets you into the routine and habit of being able to kind of practice it on yourself when you're, alone and don't have a practitioner with you, right?
No, that makes a lot of sense. Would you say you're able to use tapping to shift your mindset?
Oh, 100%. Absolutely. And that's where I kind of first started before I rolled into where I am now in the body acceptance space. A huge thing for me was wanting to teach individuals, particularly about their money mindset. So that was something that I was doing before the body acceptance space. And it really made me realize how much of the limiting beliefs and the limiting money stories that I had for myself. I grew up in a household where my parents, my mom actually had to declare financial bankruptcy, and we had bought into a business. Well, my mum and her partner at the time had bought into a business that was from a fraudulent person who ended up taking all of their money, all of our houses. We weren't allowed to tell people where we lived. We weren't allowed to give out our phone number because we had people chasing us for money all of the time. And my mum always reiterated to me growing up, like, don't get into debt, don't get a credit card, don't get a car loan, don't get anything like that, because, you'll have to repay it for the rest of your life. And so that really prevented me, from my personal experience, from going out and starting my own business, because I was so terrified of the fact that I might potentially end up in horrific amounts of debts that I wouldn't be able to pay off, or someone was going to be distrustful with me and take all of my money. And that was something that I had to work on, and EFT really helped me be able to change my money story about the situations that I experienced growing up, and how that then repeated patterns and repeated different kind of stories in my own timeline of this life. Right. And that's something that I'm very, very grateful for, because I've been able to use EFT to get past that mindset that I had personally around money.
That's amazing. Okay. What else has EFT helped you with?
A lot.
I know that's broad. That's broad.
I wake up every single morning and I do what's referred to as my big 3. So I do at least 5 minutes of breath work, at least 5 minutes of stretching, and at least 5 minutes of EFT. And being able to do those 3 things has really set my day up for some form of success. And the power of EFT and being able to kind of pick whatever I want to focus on for that day, whether or not it be, right, yesterday I didn't really feel motivated, so today I'm going to do 5 minutes of tapping on how to feel a little bit more productive. The next day I might be like, you know what, I felt really motivated yesterday and that's great, but today I'm feeling a little bit run down. Right, let's do some tapping on how I can regain some energy. And being able to pick and choose what I want to set my day up to look like, and have just that 5 minutes, and technically 15 in the scheme of things when you add all 3 of those, allowing myself to have 15 minutes to myself every single morning that I know is going to set up my day, that's the element of self-love and acceptance that I give myself every day before I start. And a lot of people make the excuse of like, I don't have the time. We need to shift that and say, well, no, it's actually just not a priority for me at the moment, right? So if you're prioritizing, having a coffee before you eat anything in the morning, well, you're just not prioritizing that element of your life. And for me, that was my life for a very long time. I would wake up in the morning. The first thing I would do is, coffee, cigarette, shower, go off to my corporate job, have another coffee, sit behind a computer all day. And that's the hamster wheel that I was on. And now that I've given myself that permission to be like, right, no one gets any of me until I get myself. And that is my 15 minutes that I give myself every single morning to be able to go out about my day in the way that I want to, right? And EFT is a huge part of that, and you can use it for 5 minutes. You can use it for, like I said, 2 hours. When I first ever learned about it, I wouldn't recommend that. 2 hours at the beginning of the EFT is just not ideal. Start off small. Introduce something for 5 minutes and build on that. If you want to try EFT, put EFT for 5 minutes as the first thing that you do in the morning. Add to that. Maybe the next week you've made it up to 10 minutes or 15 minutes. And then, just keep building. And if EFT is not for you, then that is A-okay. I'm definitely not someone who thinks that my service and profession is the be-all and end-all and everyone needs to do EFT. EFT works for some people and it doesn't work for others, and breathwork works for some people and it doesn't work for others, and therapy works for some people and it doesn't work for others. And we just need to find the thing that works best for us and roll with it. And that's not to say that it's going to last you your lifetime. You may one day decide, you know what, I'm kind of over EFT, I want to try something else. And that's when you might introduce a different tool like breathwork into the mix.
I love everything you just said there. No, I love all of that. And I love that you have a top 3. I'm big. I haven't always been someone who's had the morning routine, but I'm so big on now, because how you start the day sets the tone for so much.
It does.
And if you tell yourself you're going to do X in the morning and you don't, there's no way to reduce your confidence more than that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I love how you mentioned, try it for 5 minutes and see whether it's EFT, whether it's breathwork, whatever it is, try it and see if it's for you. And even if it's for you right now, it might not be for you forever. I love how you mentioned all that.
Thank you.
So I'm curious, what type of breath work do you do?
Oh, I personally don't do breath work at this point. Oh, sorry, in the mornings, right? Yeah, I have sorry, I was like thinking about the actual, like the hour-long breathwork sessions. I just watched this beautiful 5-minute video in the morning that is, I don't know what the correct term is it for, but just like the in and out kind of breathing and breath work, and then it kind of increases, and then you stop for a minute, and then you repeat the cycle for about 3 times. But I've done breath work in the past. One of my beautiful friends, Leanna Bishop, who is from the Mother Lung, she runs breath work sessions, and I've done them with her in the past. And for me personally, I did not have the best experience. And that's not to say that I would never try it again, because I've done breath work in other capacities as well and had very positive experiences. But for me, the breath work that I do in the morning is just a simple breathing exercise. It's definitely not the beautiful, intense stuff that yourself and people like Leanna do. So I'm not, I'm not going to say that it's not for me. It's just not for me right now. My 5 minutes in the morning is what I can handle. And one day I want to be able to build myself up to a point where, breath work is definitely part of my healing journey.
No, I get it. I was just curious. Anytime people mention breathing, meditation, breath work, I'm always curious of that realm.
Mm-hmm. I bet you would be.
But so how did you first develop your top 3 for your morning routine? Have you always done that?
Oh, great question. No, I've been a huge believer in having a morning and evening routine for a very long time. And over the years, it's just been something that I've either added on to, taken away from. Again, everything's very seasonal, right? Like, we live and breathe in seasons. And if your morning routine looks like something like having the big 3, that might serve you for a period of time. But then, like I said, you might get bored of it, or you might be like, you know what, this is not really working for me. I don't really even want to even have a morning routine. Well, that's fine. But definitely over the years, I've just kind of added and taken things away from it. I think sometimes we tend to get quite overzealous with what we want to add to our morning routines. I was someone who was very much like, right, I'm going to not only do yoga, I'm going to stretch, I'm going to go for a walk, I'm going to read a book for 15 minutes, I'm going to do EFT, I'm going to have a nice, nutritious breakfast, I'm going to walk my dog, I'm going to make sure that all of my emails are answered all before 10 a.m. And honestly, that in itself is exhausting. You think that doing all of that stuff for yourself is going to enrich you? Not necessarily. You got to pick and choose what is so important to you. And again, one of the things that I love talking about is the 8 dimensions of wellness, right? So we have all of these 8 dimensions. We can't be running at 100% of the time in all of these 8 dimensions, right? We can't be giving 100% to 8 things. It doesn't work. So what percentage can you give to your emotional wellness? What percentage can you give to your physical wellness? What percentage can you give to your financial wellness at this point in time, right? Because they can't all be balanced, in my opinion, because some need more love than others. So looking at those 8 dimensions for you, what needs the most attention right now? Or what is something that you don't actually really care about that much, so it's at the bottom of your priority list, so therefore, it's not 8 wellness dimensions, now it's 7 because I don't really care about this part of it. Not ideal, but again, it's seasonal. That might be important to you in a couple of months' time, and it is something that you want to focus on.
I relate to everything you just said there. Actually, I was working with a life coach, and I had this long, extensive 3-hour long morning routine that I thought was flourishing me and helping me so much. And I was waking up at 3 o'clock in the morning every single day just to be able to do the morning routine.
To do it all. Yeah. And that was me in the corporate space. I was doing shift work. And when I was on morning shift, I would have to get up at 3 a.m. if I wanted to get any of my stuff done. And that in itself is exhausting, right?
No, it so is. And I just love how you mentioned like the balance. It's in the seasons of life. Like, and the life coach of mine was like, something's got to give. Like, everything can't be a priority. You can't give 100% to everything. And the 8 dimensions of wellness. What are the 8 dimensions?
I'm like, I knew she's gonna ask me this. I'll try and get them off the top of my head because even though I love talking, it's so hard to remember 8 things. So you've got your emotional wellness, your physical wellness, your spiritual wellness, your financial wellness, occupational wellness. I'm gonna forget 2 of the other ones. Here we go. I will get back. Like I did a whole program on it, but no. But essentially, each of those areas are dimensions in your life where you ultimately want to create some kind of goal or intention or purpose around each of those 8 that are important to you. And a lot of the time we think that we have to give something to all 8, but I just recommend starting off with 3. Look at the 3 most important areas of dimensions of wellness in your life that you want to create some kind of change around or focus around. And more so, don't just create the goal or the intention based on what you think it should be, right? If we're talking about your physical wellness, don't go, oh, well, I want to lose 10, 20 kilos. Well, okay, but why? Is it because you want to be skinnier? Or is it a deeper meaning behind that? Is it because you want to be healthier and spend more time with your children and be around for a long and more fulfilling life? So looking at those 8 dimensions and really working towards, okay, what are the reasons why? Why? And you can also, again, use EFT to get a little bit deeper into the whys, right? If you're, again, talking about wanting to lose weight, for example, which is not something that I personally endorse. I think that, diet culture is a huge problem, very problematic, and a billion-dollar industry, and that's probably a conversation for another time. But actually going in and go like, okay, tapping on the side of the hand, like, even though I feel like I'm at my biggest weight right now and I really want to lose some of it, I deeply and completely love and accept myself anyway, and repeating that process. So it's like, okay, tapping on the top of the head, why do I want to lose weight? Why do I want to lose weight? And seeing what comes up from your subconscious. And one of the things might be, I want to be more attractive to my partner. Maybe that's one of the reasons why you want to lose weight. Okay, well, why do I want to be attractive to my partner? Why do I want to be attractive to my partner? Well, maybe one of the reasons is because he hasn't really been showing you affection since you've had a baby. Okay, and let's dive deeper and deeper and deeper and get to the root cause of, okay, what is the actual intention behind this goal for me, or what is the actual purpose of me having this audacious goal in my life, right? And getting to the root cause of that might actually make you realize, well, actually, that's not even a goal that I want to have in the first place. So let's mix it up a little bit. What do I actually want out of this? So, yeah.
I love that. That's so fascinating. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Wow, so cool. So I want to switch tones a little bit, but I know you are also a podcast host. And I'm curious how you first got into podcasting.
Oh, that's a great question. So I wanted to get into podcasting because I was just not confident. I didn't feel like I could talk to people. I didn't feel like I had important things to say. And I really felt like the only way for me to kind of overcome that was to do podcasting. And at the time, this is when I first started doing and learning about EFT. I was like, well, what am I going to do a podcast on? Well, I wanted to do a podcast on not just EFT, but other holistic practitioners around the world that have online services, because as I said, I truly believe in the power of the internet and accessibility. And so I wanted to see what other holistic facilitators had in an online capacity that could be shared with the world. And it was a great opportunity for me to also learn about EFT along the way. So that was my very first podcast, which is called Tap That, EFT and Other Holistic Friends. And that since has stopped, but the episodes are still available for people to listen to. And now I've since moved into my second podcast, which is called Wait, There's More, where we talk about all of the systems that keep women small.
So what made you decide to create the new podcast?
I think just the tapping podcast, I was asking the same questions to a variety of different people. And for me, that became quite, in all honesty, boring. Like, I didn't want to keep asking the same questions. And yes, I could have switched it up, but it just wasn't lighting me up anymore. So I took a break from that. And when I decided that I wanted to relaunch a podcast, I wanted it to be a powerful podcast with powerful conversations that were dynamic, that weren't always the same questions being asked, and being able to talk about the real kind of systems that are in place that we as women don't necessarily think about, right? Because a lot of the time we blame ourselves when things don't go right in terms of our physical appearance, right? So I didn't lose weight because I didn't try hard enough, or I wasn't dedicated enough, or I didn't get the job because I'm too old and they don't want to hire old people anymore, do they? And, you know, being able to give women a little bit of I don't want to say guiding light, but like in some elements, I guess a guiding light, but giving them the ability to see that these things that we worry so much about, they're ingrained in us because of so much conditioning that we've experienced and so much systemic issues that are built in through not only the patriarchy, but like, you know, racism, ableism, ageism, you know, so many different structures that repress us, and repress us even more when we're people that are, you know, born into an intersection, whether or not that be a woman of color, or a disabled woman. And again, we get the onus put on us to deal with these things. And it's just not up to us to be having to change these systems. It's up to us to be discerning. It's up to us to have a look at why are we getting messaged in a particular way because we are women. Why? Well, because they know that they can profit and make money off our insecurities. And that is why when you go to your local shopping centre, that the women's hygiene section is twice as big as the men's. And it's why when you line up to go to the bathroom at a nightclub, that they've got ads for, you know, diet pills and menstruation products that are called sanitary products, and all of this systemic messaging that we think is our fault, and it's just not. It's just not. Sorry, I got a bit long-winded going on there, but you can tell I'm
No, you are good. I love the passion. I love the passion. So how long did you have the first one, and like when did you start the second one?
I think I launched that one in 2020, and it was only like a podcast episode, maybe like once a fortnight. So there aren't many sitting on there. And then this one I only launched late last year. So she's only been up and running for a couple of months, but I've had great and wonderful and beautiful and powerful conversations with other experts in other industries. I've got a beautiful photographer by the name of Steffa Stock on there talking about how important it is for us as women to get in photos, even if we aren't exactly feeling like the hottest bitch in the world, just getting in those photos, because those memories are going to serve you for a greater period of time than they ever would. Speaking to nutritionists and dietitians about the beautiful process of intuitive eating, talking about other life coaches about the relationship that we as mothers have with our daughters when it comes to body image and body acceptance. So just a really great conversational pieces that are happening over there.
That's great. What would you say has been your favorite part about podcasting between both of them?
I think the way that it makes me feel afterwards, I think, and you would probably feel this way too, Amanda, is that in the lead up to a podcast, there is so much that happens behind the scenes that a lot of people do not take notice for, right? There's sourcing guests, there's creating a time with them, there's making sure that they send you the right information or pictures and things like that. There's creating the links and the times to actually meet up and to record the podcast episode. And then after that, it's the editing of it and the creating of the content to get people interested. There's promoting it in your newsletter or on social media or, down other avenues. And that is a long piece of work that a lot of people don't realize. An hour-long episode could take you up to 8 hours of creating behind the scenes work for it. And there's a lot of love that does go into it that I just don't think that a lot of people do get to witness. But after I have these conversations with the women on my show, and I'm sure you do with the guests that you have on your show, you feel very lit up by what you do because you're actually talking to like-minded individuals most of the time, unless you're podcasting about a debate or whatever the case might be. But, a lot of the time we are trying to find that community element. We're trying to find like-minded people that are interested in the same topics that we are and are just so passionate about their messages or what they want to share with the world. And when people get to talk about that sort of stuff, it's beautiful and it just lights me up. So getting off the call, after this conversation with you can guarantee that the rest of my day is going to be A-okay because I got to have a conversation about the things that I'm actually passionate about, right? So that's what I love about podcasting. What do you love about it?
I'm tearing up. I'm tearing up over here. That was beautiful. Oh my gosh, that was so sweet. And I feel the same way, though. I do. It's like bawling over here.
If I could give you a tissue through the screen, I would.
But I agree in the genuine connections and even being able to have these genuine connections virtually with so many people that I would love to meet in person, but I might not ever have the opportunity to. And I still get to connect and learn from them and vibe with them and just all the things. I love that. I love that. So that's definitely my favorite thing.
Good. Spoken like a true podcaster, No one's going to be like, oh, I love the editing process. Do you? Really?
So I typically end my podcasts with 2 segments. Have you heard of a man named Jay Shetty?
Yes, I have heard of Jay Shetty.
Okay. Now, he has a podcast called On Purpose, and I love it. And he ends his podcast with 2 segments. And I started taking those 2 segments. So the first one is called The Many Sides to Us. And these have to be answered in 1 word. Okay. Number 1. What is 1 word someone who is meeting you for the first time would use to describe you as?
Annoying. No. I think that they would say I'm quirky.
Okay. Number 2, what is one word that someone who knows you extremely well would use to describe you as?
Creative.
Number 3, what is one word you'd use to describe yourself?
Accepted.
Number 4, what is one word that if someone who didn't like you or agree with your mindset would describe you as?
Different.
Last one. What is one word you're trying to embody right now?
Try.
Okay. Second segment is the final 5, and this can be answered in a sentence, and there are 5 questions. Number 1, what is the best piece of advice you've heard or received?
The best piece of advice I received was that not sharing my message is selfish because I am therefore not giving others the permission to see what is capable.
That's powerful. Okay. Number 2, what is the worst piece of advice you've heard or received?
Fake it till you make it.
Why do you say that's the worst piece?
I just think that there needs to be a sense of authenticity of who you are as an individual in order for people to relate to you. And if you're going around and not being who you are, then what kind of relationships are you creating? Is what I'd ask them.
Number 3, what is something that you used to value that you no longer value?
Oh, that is a great question. I used to value popularity growing up. That was something that I aspired. I wanted to be the popular girl, and I never, ever, ever got that. I was very jealous of other women who had big groups of friends, and that's all I wanted. And now I'm very, very grateful that the women in my life have been the same women since I was a child, and it's just a very tight knit, drama free environment. So I value my friendships more than I value popularity.
Number 4, if you could describe what you would want your legacy to be as if someone were reading it, what would you want it to say?
I would want it to say that I gave women permission to really step away from diet culture and realize their self-worth. That would be something that I would really cherish and hope that I inspire other women to realize just how beautiful and smart and powerful and worthy they are outside of these labels and identities that they have around their physical appearance.
Wow, okay. Number 5, if you could create one law in the world that everyone had to follow, what would it be? And I'm going to want to know why.
That education be free for all. I think that there is so much untapped knowledge in people that don't get to access in this world. And I think a lot of it comes to women as well, not being able to either afford or even be allowed to go to school and tap into that knowledge that could potentially change the world. And yeah, it's something that I've always I've been asked that question before, and it's like always the same answer. I just wish that education was free for everyone and accessible for everyone.
I love that answer. I love that answer. So I do have one more question for you. What are some resources that you use consistently to help you in your everyday life? Whether that's professional, personal, however you want to take that.
Cool. Okay, so obviously EFT is one of them, a big one. If you couldn't tell, I like EFT. Um, one of the other resources that I would highly recommend is the book called Your Weight Is Not the Problem by Dr. Lindy Cohen. It's a fantastic book that I felt really helped me liberate myself from the diet culture and toxic body positivity industry. That was a great starting book. I love the power of reading. So reading anything, honestly, and again, trying is the most important thing that we can do in this world, because we know what happens when we don't try. We don't grow, we don't turn into the people that we were destined to be. And as I said earlier, the piece of advice that I got given is that, you know, if we don't try, we don't become the best version of ourselves, and therefore we don't show the world what is capable, and we don't give other people the permission to see that we can do that. So that's a resource. You know, trying is a resource. That book is a resource. EFT, obviously, you know, podcasting as well. If you are interested in listening to my podcast, it's called Wait, There's More. And I hope that helps.
Thank you so much. And now, how can people work with you?
Yeah, so you can reach out on my website, which is www.eftlaine.com. You can find me on Instagram. I am at eft.laine, Laine. Also the same on Facebook. And as mentioned, I've got a website with a couple of free resources. I have my podcast. I particularly like working in a one-on-one capacity because I feel like that gives the best results, but I do run online group sessions every now and then when I feel called to. And I have a program coming up soon, which is called A Woman's Worth. So we'll be utilizing EFT tapping along with the body acceptance space, talking about the 4 pillars of what I call the 4 empowerment pathways, which are around your emotions, your environment, your eating, and exercise. So that is coming soon, hopefully. I feel like I've been working on it for my whole entire life, but it'll come one day.
Ooh, it's so exciting. That's amazing. Okay. Well, thank you so much. And thank you for being on the podcast and speaking with me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, Amanda. I've really enjoyed having this conversation and just chatting with you about everything from EFT to podcasting. I mean, there's questions at the end. I'm going to have to tell Jay Shetty to step up his game. Like,
Why do you say to step up his game?
well, they were very hard-hitting questions. So if he's asking other people and you're asking them as well, what's going to be like, what? I'm sweating. I'm sweating as well.
Oh my gosh, you're so funny. You're so funny. Well, thank you again so much, Laine. And I will link all of your information in the show notes so everybody can connect with you directly. And thank you guys. Hey guys, Manders here, and I'm here to wrap up and summarize a few key takeaways from my fun and very informative conversation with Laine. Special thank you yet again to Laine for all her knowledge on EFT, also known as tapping, emotional freedom technique. It's something I've heard a lot about, but I didn't know a lot about the specifics of it. So I'm really glad I got to learn more about it. And I hope you guys learned some stuff as well. And as Laine mentioned, there's a lot of resources to find out more about tapping or EFT. You can simply look that up on YouTube. Or if you have questions specifically, feel free to shoot Laine a message directly. Her information is in the show notes. And I'm sure, as you guys could tell, she is such a sweetheart and very down to earth. I'm sure she would have no problem answering any of y'all's questions. Or if you're ready to experience tapping with Laine, reach out to her for that. So, as Laine explained to us, emotional freedom technique is an alternate treatment for physical pain and emotional distress. She gave a really great analogy of being on a road trip. And she also talked about the movie technique of EFT, and that's being silent and not speaking during it. But she also compared that to how much better we feel when we vent, when we get something off our chest and we're not fixating on it. So talking to someone else helps us, which would make sense that speaking out loud while tapping is going to help you as well. Then Laine talked about how in EFT, there is what they call a setup statement. And you tap the side of your hand, and there's 3 rounds of a particular affirmation. At the end of this affirmation, you say something along the lines of, even though I feel this way, I still love and accept myself anyway. Or something like, I still honor and respect who I am anyways. Laine also has a free resource called the Personal Peace Procedure, and you can get that on her website. That is where you write down 50 experiences that you think about regularly. You could do your earliest experience to your most recent one. You could do your most intense to least intense, and look through them. Look through the lens and see what you are still holding on to, and see what you can get over by yourself and what might be too big of a challenge that you need some emotional support. And that's when you would want to reach out to a facilitator to help you through this process. Laine also mentioned what she calls her big 3. These are 3 things she does every morning as she starts the day. 5 minutes of stretching, 5 minutes of breath work, and 5 minutes of EFT. And it's 15 minutes, and that sets Laine up for a powerful day. We both emphasized the importance of a morning routine and of setting yourself up at the start of the day for a successful day. If you win the morning, you win the day. That's something I always talk about. Then Laine got into discussing how trying things is so important, and seeing if it's for you. It might be, it might not be, but if you never try it, you won't know. Just try 5 minutes of EFT, try 5 minutes of breath work, try 5 minutes of anything, and see how you like it. Maybe you love it, maybe you hate it, but there is no way to fully know if something is for you if you never actually experience it. Y'all, I could go down a rabbit hole with that, but that's even in terms of every area of life. You can't accurately, genuinely know if a certain career is right for you if you don't experience it. Experiencing the actual thing is different than just playing it out in your mind what you think it would be like. So if there's something you're contemplating, or hell, even if there's something someone says to you, I recommend you try XYZ. Why not try it? Why not? We're not getting time back, y'all. We're here, then we're not. I say this all the time, too. Then Laine talks about finding the right thing for you. And just because a certain thing is right for you right now doesn't mean it always will be. There are seasons of life, and this is something it took me a long time to understand because I've always been the inner perfectionist in me, the inner Virgo in me, always wanted to prioritize everything and check all the boxes, do every single thing, give 100% to everything. But that just caused me to be burnt out. And it caused some things to fall short of that 100%. Laine emphasizes the seasons of life and figuring out what is important to you in each season. Asking yourself why. Why? Why do you want this? Why do you not want that? Why? Bringing awareness into your feelings and why you want to do something, why you want to go somewhere, why you don't want to do it, and tapping into the why of each goal. Why do you have this goal? What is the purpose of it? What is the intention of this goal in your life? Some people don't even know why they have certain goals. And if you don't know why you have a goal, one, it's going to be harder to achieve it because you don't have a why. Two, what's the point of it? Why not focus on a goal that you have a reason to work on? Laine also discusses the 8 dimensions of wellness. And Laine emphasizes that she believes you should prioritize and focus on 3 out of the 8 because you can't give 100% to everything. Now, the 8 dimensions of wellness are 1, emotional, 2, physical, 3, occupational, 4, social, 5, spiritual, 6, intellectual, 7, environmental, and lastly, financial. I'm going to say them all once more. Emotional, physical, occupational, social, spiritual, intellectual, environmental, and financial. Now, Laine suggests prioritizing 3 of them. Realistically, you cannot prioritize 8 of them. No one can. You are not going to see 100% success and results in all areas. The chances of it are almost impossible. I say almost impossible, even though I don't use the almost word anymore, because nothing in life is impossible. However, you will be driving yourself to the ground if you attempt to put 100% into 8 dimensions. And I'm saying this from personal experience because I've had times in my life when I've tried my hardest to prioritize and put 100% into all of the areas. And one of the big things it led to was me falling asleep at the wheel. And fortunately, I didn't get hurt. Nobody else did. But it was a big eye opener for me that I can't keep doing this. It's another thing to be unrealistic with your life goals. So, that being said, I highly encourage y'all to really do some reflecting and list out these 8 dimensions and ask yourself, is this dimension a high priority in my life? To me, should this be a high priority in my life? It doesn't matter what Joe Schmo, your mom, your cousin down the street. Doesn't matter what they think your priorities should be. What do you think out of these 8 should be your top 3 priorities? And what is your goal in each of them? You should have a goal or an intention, whatever you want to call it, attached to each of these dimensions. Well, I hope that helps. If you guys have any questions, any comments, any feedback on this, anything that resonated with you, anything that didn't resonate with you, I would absolutely love to hear from you. I love that more of y'all have started reaching out to me about feedback, about things you like, questions you've had, how even things you didn't like or agree with that I said. I'd love to hear from any of y'all. My info is in the show notes as well as Laine's. And thank you guys so much for tuning in to Mander's Mindset. In case no one told you today, I'm proud of you. I'm rooting for you. And you got this. As always, if you enjoyed the show, I would really appreciate it if you would leave me a 5-star rating, leave a review, and share it with anyone you think would benefit from this. And don't forget, you are only one mindset shift away from shifting your life. Thanks, guys. Until next time.